All right, I see the attendees are just about leveling out, so we'll go ahead and begin our programming. So um, I'm Terry Lansdale, Bikewalk, North Carolina. I want to thank you all for being here today. I got to tell you, it's been an emotional morning this morning, and I have no doubt it's going to be an emotional afternoon as well. An incredible opening day of sessions that is continues to excite and astound me with the amazing level of participants. And I think we're going to be incredibly impressed by this one as well. I'd like to remind everybody that we do offer closed caption in real time. And that's going to be available by clicking your closed caption screen at the bottom of your toolbar if you need it. And it's also being streamed live on YouTube. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator today, Wes Hall, to introduce the Transportation Accessibility Barrier to Sport Participation for Individuals with Disabilities session. Wes, if you can unmute yourself and take it away.
I'm Wes Hall. I'm the Director of Programs with Bridge to Sports. And with me today, we have three of our athletes, DJ Robinson, Kyle Bruhawk, and Ed Rizzuto. And then also helping me out with this presentation today is Daisy Hayward, our program cultivator. And so we're going to go and I'm going to pop up the slideshow and we'll start kind of running through this. We like to save our questions toward the end, so just take notes as you go along so we can kind of keep some things somewhat organized as we go from beginning to end. We have left our plan to have a pretty good question and answer session toward the end, try to get everybody's questions addressed. So do not fret. If something comes up, we'll find a way to get your questions answered as quick as we can. All right. Okay. As you see here, this is our first slide of British sports, with changing the perception of the disability one game at a time. With British Sports, we provide adapted sports for programming for individual physical disabilities. We offer archery, air rifle, bocce, cycling, golf, kayaking, and wheelchair basketball throughout the year. Our program for the disabilities, it just is kind of a broad scope. They can get pretty more specific on certain disabilities, but the kind of a general overhead approach view is we serve athletes who have cerebral palsy, athletes with visual impairment, amputations, spina bifida, spinal cord injury, stroke survivors, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, traumatic brain injury. And even with some of these disabilities, some of them are combo, so they may have a stroke survivor and cerebral palsy, or a cognitive disability as well, due to the traumatic brain injury or the disability, the physical disability. So as we mentioned, mentioned earlier with Terry, is how transportation accessibility is a barrier to sport participation with individuals with disabilities. And so as an organization that offers adapted sports to people in the Toronto area with a disability, one of our things I've come to learn over the past couple of years with Bridge to Sports is the ability, or sometimes will be the barrier of our athletes getting into programs, whether it's at the Jewish Community Center or at a community park to participate in the sports outdoor activities, or even on site at the British Sports location. And so what we did, Dave and I looked through the three counties, Orange County and Durham and Wake. And so we looked at facilities that had a community center or was a trailhead to one of the major trails, the American Tobacco Trail or the Neuse River Trail. And so it could be a park that had a secondary trail, for instance, like Green Hills Park off Durant Road has Abbott's Creek that connects to the Neuse River Trail. So that would have been a facility included into this data. We did not get into the weeds of every single park and every single neighborhood in the Toronto area. Just more on the focus areas where they'd be more community type programming for people in the community. So we look at 90, we had 95 community centers and trailheads in the three counties. And per the paratransit, the facilities must be within a 3/4 mile of a bus stop to be accessible via paratransit. And through our data and research, we found 55% of them were accessible by paratransit guidelines. Even with this, there are some situations where depending on what municipality may be in, so if you're going from like Durham to Cary, you still might not be able to get there via the paratransit. And so, but that's just kind of a general perspective of what we found per those guidelines. This is kind of our rough graph of what we looked at. So you can see that it's like, for instance, Wake County, Raleigh has the highest of 81% accessibility, where in Orange County, Carrboro, and Chapel Hill are pretty much one and the same, 80 to 100%. And then with Orange County Parks and Rec, 71%, Durham City, 83%, which is quite high. So having access to park recreation and the trail is essential for individuals with a disability to enjoy social interactions, live a physically active lifestyle, maintain a healthy and mental well-being, and be able to fully engage as a member of the community. And so if they're programmed at a community center, whether it's a bocce program or a pottery program, if the athletes, if people with a physical disability can access the programs, then they lose the ability to be part of the larger community in the Triangle area. And so what we're going to do now, we're going to process this over to DJ Robinson. DJ Robinson is one of our athletes who actually ranked nationally, internationally in tandem cycling, as well as an avid dancer as well, getting his master's in dance and physical inclusion at Duke University. So I'm going to pass over to him, and he's going to address what is the process of getting paratransit in the Triangle area, as well as the process within the city you live, the process within the county you live, and the process across county lines with paratransit. With that to say, I hand it over to you, DJ.
Cool. So, like Wes said, the process can sometimes for applying and navigating transportation in that way could be kind of complicated. Right now, I've had the experience of looking at it from two different perspectives as far as applying and going through that whole process. Being a Raleigh native at a point, the process is that you send in an application at time. You send in an application, then you must wait about 21 days, and then you have to pass not rigorous. You have to kind of already be using some type of routes and things to that you can do. You have to be able to prove that you can travel safely. If you use an aid, if you use a modality piece of equipment to help you maneuver in that context. Then once you are in the program, then at least in Raleigh, for instance, you call and schedule an appointment where you want to go, what time you want to be picked up, when you want to be picked up, where you want to go. And once that's done, then they, it's a curbside pickup, so they come and pick you up and take you to where you need to go. But like Wes mentioned earlier, oftentimes that's, if you're outside of that realm of that quarter mile, 3/4 of a mile, it's kind of in which their transportation won't go, then that's an issue. However, in Durham, where I'm living currently, which is new to me, I schedule about 3 days or so in advance again, and I still go through that same kind of process like in Raleigh. Call them up, say my name, where I want to go, and go from there. 1 second. To cross county lines is a little bit more challenging. So right now, if I want to go from, say, Durham to NC State, I have to send over my paperwork from my existing transportation service to Raleigh paratransit. It's called Go Triangle, and then they put you in their system, and so then this allows you to go to Cary, Chapel Hill, Raleigh. But even then, if you need to go further in to those areas, you have to switch over to their particular mode of transportation services meant for persons with disabilities. So there's that. So yeah.
So you guys see, so I mean, that's the pretty much the process there. And so even depends, like what Pro DJ says, what kind are you going from? If you're going from Durham to Wake, sometimes some are going different than going from Raleigh to Durham. So some of those inconsistencies there in the situation with our athletes who try to get transportation within the triangle area. So our next one we're going to tap into also Ed and Kyle as well. So kind of the hurdles of paratransit once accepted, and they're going to kind of go into some more detail of their unreliable time for pickup or drop off. Travel time can be excessive. Inconsistency between and or within municipalities for paratransit. Facilities outside of paratransit service and lack of sidewalk or connectivity and inaccessible bus stops, etc. from there. So we'll start with you, Kyle, unless you're going to share your experiences once you have been accepted to paratransit within the system.
So once you've been accepted into the paratransit system, that is good for 5 years. And then one of the things during that time frame that is a really big problem is reliability. Sometimes you'll get a pickup time and you have to be, you'll end up getting a different pickup time, or it's not the same time as you originally scheduled. I actually had times where my reservation was canceled or didn't get into the system. I was told I had a pickup time and it never showed up. It never got into their software or something. They didn't, I called them wondering where the van was, and they said, it's, you don't even have a reservation. So it can be quite unreliable. Travel times can be in excess of 2 hours from one place to another, especially if you're going across county lines. Another experience I had is an inconsistency, not just between municipalities, but between the transit service and the paratransit service in the same municipality. For example, I was riding the bus. If I'm riding the bus, I get an ID card. I go in, it expires in 5 years, the same kind of way that the paratransit application does. I go in there to the transit office downtown, and I bring my expired ID and another one. It's just very, very automatic, just kind of works. And they seem to know everything that they need to know. There's no waiting period. They just print out the new laminated ID card with my picture on it and take a new picture and all that. Whereas with the paratransit, it's a whole nother process. I have a permanent disability, but I have to go through the whole process again, as if I never had a disability to begin with, and I have to go through the whole process to certify. So that can be. Mm-hmm.
Cal, you mentioned that I know you use the app from the program, and there's a question came up about the STS transit software. Do you guys use that as well as far as how to get around the paratransit?
No, no, we don't have any software, any app or anything to do that. It's just you make a phone call and you have to schedule they say 1 calendar day in advance, but they're usually booked 3 to 4 days out, sometimes 5 or more, depending on when you're trying to get someplace.
Ed, can you
So,
share? Go ahead, Kyle.
so that's kind of another unreliability that we face with the paratransit services. If I want to get on a bus, I can use an app to find out when the next bus is coming and be at the stop on time. But it still takes, because it's a fixed route bus, it still can take a long time to get from one place to another. But with the paratransit, it's a little different. You can't even use an app to find out when you're getting picked up. They might text you. They usually don't anymore. They've stopped that apparently. And you could, but before that, you could get a different pickup time that was on your phone, your reservation phone call.
Ed, can you share some of your experiences as well?
Yeah, I think the point of the issues that Kyle was raising was that as people with disabilities who are relying out of necessity on paratransit to get from point A to point B, I live in Durham, so I'm specifically referring to Durham. You know, let's say point A is your home and point B is a gathering place to go on an outing with Bridge to Sports. Relying on paratransit, Durham has a pretty big paratransit system. They service a lot of people. I've been informed that they're servicing, or at least prior to the pandemic, they were servicing about 1,000 trips a day. But the demand is much greater than that. So there's the system, by the accounts of administrators working within the system, by all accounts, it's overburdened and not able to effectively serve the community that it's intended to serve. So like what Kyle's referring to with regard to reliability is that if that Bridge to Sports event was supposed to start at 10 a.m., in order to ensure that you would get there by 10 a.m., you might need to schedule your ride for at least a couple hours in advance, because there's not a great deal of certainty that you'll if you plan to arrive by 9:45, which isn't unreasonable. There's not a whole lot of certainty that's going to happen. It's a shared ride program, so there may be other riders that you're sharing the paratransit van with, which may mean that your drop off is going to follow after you drop 1 or 2 or 3 other people off. And similarly, that impacts your pickup time. You're given, I believe it's a half-hour window on either side of the time that you're given to pick up. So that's inherently, it's an inherent impediment to actually using the service. I know plenty of people who are eligible to ride paratransit who choose not to, who choose not to go where they would otherwise want to go, because of the inherent unreliability of the system. And mind you, we're all grateful that the service is there, but the way it's being run at least in Durham, and I know from other accounts in other areas as well, where it's overburdened, it's actually discouraging people with disabilities from getting out, from engaging, from going to recreational events or community events or work events. I know a gentleman who is a graduate student at NC Central who is really trying really hard to pursue his psychology degree, but is finding that relying on paratransit is resulting in being late for classes or for having to get to NC Central extraordinarily early, to ensure that he'll be there on time. So reliability just because the system is so overburdened, is a really big issue. Kyle also mentioned the Durham fixed route bus has, from what I understand, a pretty effective app component to you, where you can monitor the arrival time of buses and just kind of keep track of things that way. There's no similar parallel for paratransit. And that would, you know, in initiating a program where there was some sort of technological link between the rider and the paratransit service, where you could monitor, track where your ride is, how long it's going to take before it gets to you, things like that. That might enhance people's comfort level with using the service. At least they would have a better sense as to, you know, the actual arrival time rather than the estimated arrival time that may or may not be accurate. So I think modernizing things would go a long way towards encouraging people with disabilities to get out and engage, but you still have the scheduling unreliability that is certainly an impediment to getting out and participating in all aspects of community life. Be it, you know, we're talking here about recreation, sports, athletics, but you know, it carries over to employment, to education, to social, cultural engagements as well.
We're going to pause, run real quickly. Terry needs to fix the technological situation real quick, and then we'll resume.
Yeah, my apologies, Wes, Ed, and everyone. Just want to double check with our closed captioning. We just got a message in the chat box just to make sure we have that accessibility in place. Loretta, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
let me check it. I'm sorry. I see what they're saying. I thought I had it going, but I guess not. Let me double check. Okay. See what's going on here. Okay. Yeah, but somehow it got disconnected here. Let's see. Okay, let's see here. Our event dashboard. I don't know why it signed itself off. Let me start it again. That's weird.
okay, thanks for checking, Loretta. We're going to go ahead and
Go
continue.
ahead. Yeah, I'll get it going again.
Thank you, Loretta. Thank you.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, so well, thank you. So we'll so DJ, do you have something to share as well?
Yeah, I wanted to share. I couldn't help but this is as they were speaking, the reliability of these transportation services tends to shift from county to county. For example, being in Raleigh, they have individual they utilize individual taxi services. Which I had been able to use as I've been a resident at a point, and I use it now when I go there. When I need to kind of transfer over to go further in further in Raleigh to go to an event or what have you, I know that there was a lot more effectiveness in having the single, taxi services to help get you to point A to point B. When I would go for bike rides or training sessions, it was easier for me to navigate those things. But again, it wouldn't help if I needed to go to a different county. It wouldn't help if I because they also still have their, while it's effective and it may cut down on the time of wait and pickup. There's still no system is perfect. And I also have had, even as I'm in Durham now, there are moments when I've called a day before and I couldn't get a trip to go to a bike ride with British Sports or to go speak at an engagement. And they said, oh, well, we're booked for this day, but we have an opening on Tuesday. But your service is supposed to provide an on-demand service, and I can't get on-demand service that day when I need it. So then what are you saying to me that when I'm stuck and I can't get there. So now I'm forced to take other means of transportation that may cost money out of my pocket that may be more than the cost of the actual ride. Maybe the ride may be $3 for a ticket or so, or right now it's free because of the pandemic. But in a normal circumstances, price economic hindrance changes as well, which is so in that there is a for us individuals who are blind and disabled athletes and things who want to use the opportunities that we have, whether it be work or education or athletics, to help build connections and new opportunities for ourselves. This is a big hit across the board. So then there's and we have to spend money out of our pocket that maybe go in excess over time than what we would spend using the transportation that we have to kind of settle with because what we're given. And like Ed said, there's nothing, and Kyle talked about earlier, there's nothing wrong with it, and we're grateful for the service. There are just more efficient ways, I think, that could be put in place in order to make it go more efficiently across the board with the utilization of other services as a complement and as a supplement to the overbearing feeling that maybe the system may be under. So
one thing that's kind of come in some of the chats was the ADA accessibility of the buses and the stops.
Okay.
And so that's a good point you made there. But can you guys speak on the actual bus stops themselves, the accessibility of the bus stops, like coming off the bus stop?
Yeah. So for me, I traveled a lot, and I haven't done as much in Durham, but I know as I traveled a lot in Raleigh, I use it's called a Transloc app. And basically you can kind of plot, it has different regions. So you can put in Chapel Hill, you can see Chapel Hill, Triangle, whatever place you need to go. You press that and then it gives you the route, pretty much lays it out where you need to be. But the mapping system isn't always accessible once you get past that particular listing or component within the app itself, because the apps, they're kind of a multimedia functioned display, and certain buttons and things don't read out as properly. So that's kind of ineffective. But what is efficient is sometimes it does give you correct, most time correct in estimations of when the buses come and how far they're away. That's kind of easy to track. But again, that's only in a triangle. It could change at certain areas, and they could make it a little bit more efficient. I've used it to go to Durham. I go from Durham to Raleigh.
How often do you typically travel between Durham and
right now I would say about three times a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I know.
Mhm.
So I know like Ed and Kyle, you got to mention before the actual physicality of the ADA of the bus stop. Sometimes you guys feel it's not ADA compliant. Like we get a bus stop and it drops off a cliff or into a ditch. Can you guys speak on that a little bit as well, as far as they pretty much focus on the sidewalk connectivity and the ADA compliance or the bus stops, like you're not being just dropped off on the side of the road?
It's a pervasive issue. To be able to ride the fixed route buses, you need to be able to get to the bus stop safely and get from the bus stop to wherever you're going safely, and that requires good sidewalk infrastructure. And again, I live in Durham, so I'm speaking to Durham. I know there are some extraordinary efforts and attention being given to the need to improve sidewalks, install sidewalks, and connect sidewalks. But it's really a deterrent for people with disabilities, people who are relying. I have a seeing eye dog. He does a great job. But like I live in North Durham. I live about a mile from the nearest bus stop. And walking a mile, I don't mind walking a mile at all. I walk a lot, but to get to this particular bus stop, there's no sidewalk available. And even with my dog, I'd be walking on a 2-lane road with no shoulder and ditches and stuff. And that's unfortunate. I certainly make good use of that bus and that route, but getting 2 bus stops, particularly with regard in the context of people with disabilities, people walking with canes, people using wheelchairs, and not just people with disabilities. I mean, dads and moms pushing baby strollers. It's important to them. It's important to everyone. So, all the efforts and all the focus Durham is putting on improving sidewalk pedestrian infrastructure is really great. But it's a big project, and as long as there are stretches between you and a bus stop where there aren't sidewalks, or where there are sidewalks and then they just stop for a block or 2 before picking up, again, that's going to be a big deterrent to.
Have you guys ever had
Well,
any issues with? Hey, have you guys ever had any issues with your guide dog being not permitted to come on the bus, or they've been all welcome to come
No.
onto the paratransit?
Yeah,
I have not had that problem with
Yeah.
transit, and I'm happy to say with really any commercial or retail or governmental facility in Durham. It's a very, very welcoming, hospitable, understanding, compliant community in that regard, at least. So,
and I'll second that. I'll second that with Raleigh and other surrounding counties. There doesn't tend to be an issue unless the driver itself with the dog or something, but they know the policies and things, but they may not a person with a service dog, so that may make them question as far as having issues with it. Hasn't, at least in my opinion, and most reasons, doesn't always come up even within the Triangle, Durham, Raleigh area much, but there are where there are, and so yeah.
You guys, so Uber and Lyft will take your dogs when you're done. We take your dogs.
So funny you say that. I'm not even gonna lie. I can't lie to you. Uber is hit and miss. I have experienced times when Ubers have just drove by when they saw you and they knew it was you. They would drive by and they didn't stop, or they complained like, "Oh, you have a dog," and I didn't know, and they could be allergic to it, or denying access. It's more like issues sometimes up north. Down here, I haven't really experienced in this region. I haven't really experienced a lot of it. I definitely hear about a lot, and for me, I do take Lyft and Uber a lot, and from what I can tell, like pretty much everybody's like are always kind of excited they see a dog. But no one in my has had too much of an issue, and if they have had an issue with it, I just kindly explain it to them so that they can realize, because they don't know. They're like, oh, they see this dog and like, wait, you have a dog, like he can't get in here. Like, yes, he can, and I go through this whole soliloquy of information to share with them so that they can understand where I'm coming from. And then once you kind of educate them a little bit, then everything's good to go. So again, it's a case-by-case basis, and it depends on Lyft or Uber because they can kind of be different in their hiring processes. One screens more than the other, and you have some individuals where you have a foreign driver versus an American driver. These different things come into play because they may not be familiar with policies.
I can add to that. Several years ago, the National Federation for the Blind filed a lawsuit against Uber and Lyft because of the frequency with which drivers were refusing to accept guide dogs, not just for people who are blind, but other legitimate service animals. And there was a settlement 2 or 3 years ago that compelled Uber to mandate that all drivers have to consent to their understanding that it is the law that they are required as Uber drivers and as Lyft drivers to provide transportation to people with service animals, and it's not just the boilerplate, it's not just built into the terms and conditions that drivers have to accept when they sign on to Uber. Uber and Lyft regularly, periodically, prompt their drivers to acknowledge their obligation to take service animals in their vehicles. And I've racked up, 1,000 Uber and Lyft rides over the past several years. And maybe 3 or 4 times drivers have refused my dog, and Uber, they encourage us to report that. And each time it's been reported, the driver has been removed from the Uber platform. So they're taking that pretty seriously. I don't see it as a pervasive problem the way DJ just described it. If drivers sometimes will raise an issue about it, and then you just kind of talk them through it, and they know that they're obligated under the law and under Uber and Lyft's policies to provide that transportation. But if I may, just since DJ brought up Uber and Lyft, and Wes brought up Uber and Lyft, I think that's a good tie-in to what we've been talking about with regard to paratransit. I'm sorry, Wes?
Can we tackle one more question about the access? So one came up as I said, if you guys know a particular bus stop is not accessible, like it's just a concrete pad and there's no sidewalk to it, are you guys able to request paratransit to do more door-to-doors so you to allow to get the accessibility to public transportation? Or are you guys finding that they don't take into account of the actual condition of the bus stop or whether or not how much assistance they'll give you?
That's a great question. If I understand it right, if this bus stop is not accessible, does paratransit take that into account as to whether or not they're going to provide transportation? Is that?
Yeah, the question is, can people request paratransit within the zone due to a known hazard like a sidewalk gap akin to transportation of the hazards in busing?
Well, the standard for paratransit is if the person's disability is such that it makes, if they're unable to safely use the bus stop, access the bus stop, then they're eligible for paratransit. So if the condition of the bus stop renders it inaccessible to a person with a disability, then I believe that would meet the eligibility requirement.
So with and getting to all this, and well, this kind of time where we were about to talk about that, about the shared scooters and bike shares that are going on in the local communities. Do you feel that any misuse or abuse of those have hindered your ability as someone with a disability to get around the city? Or do you feel that those services, those bike shares, scooter shares, are pretty much in check, or do they need more regulation to allow more safe travel or walking throughout the cities?
I haven't personally had an issue with it. I don't use the scooters because I can't get my dog to sit on it. But but I have heard of not frequently, but a number of people who are blind, who are blind pedestrians, who have had close calls with scooters, but it doesn't seem to be a pervasive issue.
All right, so as we're talking about some of the questions to cover and the thing about what are some solutions and possibilities to help improve the service. And so that's actually our next slide. I'll take this on. And so this goes into how paratransit can be improved accessibility. So modernizing the schedule, dispatch programming software, incorporate on-demand services, e.g. Uber or Lyft, increase direct outreach to people with disabilities to get feedback on policy procedures, And people with disabilities are the best authorities on their own experiences, and their voices should be prioritized with regards to matters of public policy and impacts on them. And so with those 4 bullets, I'm going to pass that mic on to Ed to elaborate more on the details on what this crew has talked about, how to improve paratransit accessibility within Triangle area.
Sure. Thank you, Wes. Just following up on something we touched on earlier that Kyle brought up, that, and I spoke a little bit about using app-based programs, I think can greatly enhance people's comfort level and ability to use the paratransit services. Again, having an app where you can schedule, track, and pay for your paratransit ride would, I think, greatly improve the service. Right now, it's cash only, exact change, that kind of thing. You can buy a monthly pass, but that's I believe you have to actually go to the Go Durham Access office to buy your pass. Anyway, it just seems like a relatively easy step that they can take to modernize it and make it more user friendly if they just have, and that's not, it's not that extreme. Everybody's using their phones to pay for this, that, and the other thing these days, and that would be a good step up. But as we were talking about on-demand services like Uber and Lyft, there have been pilot programs around the country that have looked at using Uber and Lyft as paratransit options, with some pretty interesting successes from a number of different levels. I have heard that Durham is looking at this. I believe about a year or so ago, they were in the process of putting together a pilot program for utilizing Uber and Lyft as paratransit options. And I believe it's still being looked at, but it has not launched yet. But the 2 main benefits of adding Uber and Lyft as paratransit options, and there are certainly more than 2, but the 2 main ones are it provides so much more flexibility for people who rely on paratransit to get from point A to point B, and what that means is in real terms is to be able to engage in all aspects of community life. Again, here we're talking about sports and recreation, and that's really, really important. Utilizing that kind of service where you could, just summon up a ride an hour before you needed to be there, and have a pretty good assurance that you're going to get there in that amount of time. You can track your ride and just take care of it just on your phone, is just a really wonderful thing. It takes that whole thing we were talking about where you have hour and a half windows of pickup times and uncertainty as to when you're going to get dropped off due to the number of potential passengers that have to be dropped off. It eliminates all of that. It also eliminates the need to schedule things well in advance, and it affords the flexibility of if I wanted to go on a bike ride with a bike trip with Bridge to Sports, I could get an Uber or a Lyft from my home to the meeting point. And if after that ride, rather than go straight home, I wanted to, go, grab a bite to eat at a restaurant in downtown Durham, I'd have that flexibility. Whereas if I was relying on the paratransit vans, excuse me, that flexibility just isn't there. You have to prepare that well in advance, and there's the flexibility to sort of make on the spot decisions as to where you want to go is not there. So the flexibility and the comfort level for people who are relying on it is is really important. The other really big thing about using on-demand rides like Uber and Lyft as paratransit options is it's a significant, potential significant savings in money for the city or the community, the municipality that is subsidizing paratransit. In Durham, I've been informed by Go Durham Access personnel that the average cost of any paratransit ride on one of the vans, this goes back, I was informed this 2 years ago in December, so it's not current, but it's certainly close. Every passenger, every trip that Go Durham Access makes on its paratransit program is about $26 or $27, regardless of the number of people riding the van, regardless of the distance, regardless of the time of day. It averages out to about $26 or $27. There are very few places you can go to from one point in Durham to another where using Uber or Lyft that's going to cost you $26 or $27. So the potential savings to the city in using Uber and Lyft would be really significant. It would also, there are Uber and Lyft are not necessarily available to people with wheelchairs, for instance. That could be a problem. There are some wheelchair accessible vehicles in the Uber and Lyft pools, but it's not being offered as an alternative to the vans. It's just another option. So people relying on wheelchair accessible vehicles will still have the vans available, and the availability of the vans will increase as more people who rely on paratransit are stepping out of the vans to use Uber and Lyft. So there's I think an all-round scheduling benefit for the people who are relying on it, and there's a financial benefit for the people who are funding it. There's a model that was done up in Boston. The Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority did a pilot program. They published the results in May of 2019, and I read through that report. A lot of what I'm talking about is based on information provided there, and some discussions I've had with people within the Durham transit community as well. Wes can share that. It will drop it in the chat box, and if anyone's interested, you can take a look at that report. But it was very clear. There's a financial savings, and it enhances the mobility for people who rely on paratransit to incorporate on-demand services such as Uber and Lyft into paratransit. So I'd love to see that, that come into Durham. I think a lot of people would be excited about that, and just feel a lot more comfortable engaging on all levels of community life here, including sports and recreation.
I catch up on the questions. So there's one question that came up was, is there some collaboration, communication with businesses and shared space parking for access near trails? We actually ran into that situation early midsummer. We currently right now, we run a program out of the South Point Crossing strip mall. It's right near the my trail's mixed up, the American Tobacco Trailhead, right there off Fayetteville Street. And so we were able to get a MOU with the LLC of that shopping center, along with agreement with the local shop owners that in the parking lot area we'd be impacting, to come to an agreement to be able to pull our equipment trailer in and have our athletes have access to the parking spots in front of the businesses. Our volunteers still park inside the American Tobacco Trailhead parking lot, but the athletes, whether they're using paratransit or driving their own vehicle, had access to where we were staging for the cycling program. So those partnerships have happened. That was one of three LLCs that I contacted to try to get use of a parking lot that actually responded back. So it just really comes down to the owners, the businesses within that particular shopping mall, whether or not they want the impact or not of their business. I think the one where we're staging now, there's actually a boutique pet shop treat bakery. And so, and almost every one of us have a dogs. And so we went in and bought dog treats, and some of our athletes went in and got some toys for their guide dogs and stuff like that. So I think it was kind of a win-win situation in that particular scenario. What we have run into, now part of the reason we had looked at, because we looked at different locations. We actually looked at Herdon Park, which is south of Triangle Mall, right on the ATT, which is a very ideal location to start out a program like ours, because the trail entry level is pretty minimal, where the trail entry level, the Neuse River, the American Tobacco Trail, where we start north of 40, to go north on the trail, there's a little more road crossings, which we try to avoid, and adapt the programming for safety. But getting up over the hill from South Point Mall over 40 is a skill, there's a huge skill gap to get over that hill. So when we looked at that site there, our Durham residents were able to get there, which was great. But our athletes who were in Raleigh, Wake County area would have to have gotten a Uber lift from the mall into a 10-minute drive down the street to Herdon Park. Fortunately, we were able to get the MOU with South Point Crossing, which kind of alleviated that situation. Okay. All right. You guys, that is into the Q&A of this. If you guys have any more questions, I believe I am caught up with all the questions. All right, so one question. So the sports that these athletes participate in, so they've all three have participated in goal ball. Right now, Ed and Kyle are the ones who were in the goal ball program this past winter and spring. We're at the Jewish Community Center, and which kind of comes to another situation where the Jewish Community Center, the JCC off Cornwall, is about a mile from the Durham transit line system. So we were able to Kyle required us to be able to go up and pick him up from the bus stop and bring him to the JCC. All three of them, Ed and DJ and Kyle are also on the cycling team. And so we cycle about twice a month, whether it's the American Tobacco Trail, the Neuse River Trail. So we've actually started just the first time to use the Green Hills Park off Durant Road, which was very accessible, a little bit confusing at first for the driver to understand how getting to the park, because there's 2 or 3 addresses there, but once you get in the park, you just follow the sign and you can get to the actual park part of the situation. But it was a great situation where we had a beginner trail, but also advanced trails. I believe DJ pulled out 45 miles that day when I went down to Anderson Point back, wore his pallet out. And so those are programs they deal with as well. They've also have participated in archery and air rifle as well on site at Bridge of Sports. And so, and we're kind of at Bridge of Sports location saddles the Orange County, Durham County line. We have a Durham County address, but we're actually in Orange County. I think I probably crossed the county line 2 or 3 times before I get to work when I drive in.
Can't wait till it gets back up and running, the goal ball program. We've had to put it off because of the pandemic. I'm looking forward to getting back into it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's exactly like reverse dodgeball. So you want to get hit by the ball. So one question came up was the case studies using the ride services and paratransit. What did the process look like? Is it usually a city or a transit agency involved in the initiative? And any thoughts on bus paratransit systems accommodating equipment like adaptive bicycles or trikes on their vehicles? I can
No.
speak to that really quick. With adaptive bikes, when it comes to trikes, it is a possibility it could happen. It would require a much different system set up than a typical bike rack you see on some back of someone's car, even sometimes on some of the buses that exist now. A trike would take up about the space of 3 bikes, and then a tandem would possibly may extend beyond the width of the bus. And so there comes some issues there as far as, I think, kind of beyond reasonability of a bus driver, make sure that it doesn't get damaged in transit. But yeah, go ahead, Ed, you can connect with about the service of paratransit. What does the process look like between city and transit agencies?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Okay. It's for the case studies of using the ride services for paratransit. What does the process look like? Is it usually a city or a transit agency initiative?
Well, the one that I referenced was sponsored by the Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority. So it was, it was conducted by researchers at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. But it's got to be a collaborative effort, because in most municipalities, including in Durham, if I understand this correctly, the city has to provide paratransit service, but the paratransit service provided in Durham is contracted out. Excuse me, and they changed contracts I believe as of the beginning of September. I don't recall the name of the business that is running the paratransit at this point. But the initiative has to be a collaboration between the city and the contractor that's actually providing the service, and that's how it looked at in the MBTA survey that we're offering the link. We've shared the link in the chat for. But it's my understanding of the way paratransit works is more often than not, it's contracted out by the city or the municipality that's providing the service.
Wes, I don't think you're unmuted. Hang on one second.
Oh, there we go. So for Lynn's question about the adapted bikes on the paratransit, paratransit is at least the one of the vehicles we have seen. They're anywhere 15 or 20 passenger minibus, and are not equipped to carry adapted bikes. So not to say they could not possibly do it, but even with for instance, from our riders who do hand cycles, a hand cycle is anywhere in length about anywhere from 5 to 6 feet in length, and would take up the space of what would be about anywhere 3 to 3.5 bikes on a normal rack, just due to the size. And in most vehicles, if the bike rack for a hand cycle is not angled upward, it's not upward is not laying parallel, like the front wheels a little bit higher. The front and back wheels of those bikes can extend beyond the width of the vehicle, which can cause issue possibility of damage while driving down the road. But currently, right now, our athletes currently with the Bridgeport program, we provide all the cycles for them, mainly because the price point to get into adaptive cycling is great. So a typical hand cycle or even a recumbent trike for adaptive cyclists will start at $3,000 and shoot upwards to $14,000 for the bike. The tandems will start around about $2,000, $2,500 a bike. So for Bridges Sports, we're able to get grants to pay for those bikes, and therefore offer these bikes for the athletes to use without having to dish into their pocket to buy very expensive equipment and move it around.
Great. Wes, Ed, Kyle, DJ, everyone, thank you very much for being here today. An amazing conversation and a large number of questions in the chat box. You guys did great getting through them.